Welcome to another edition of Let's Wine. Today from Clearwater, Florida, and we're in the framework of the Plastics Executive Forum. And I have my co-host here, Andrea Said. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
And we have two very special guests and also wine lovers. So, Andrea, why don't you introduce our two very special guests?
Yes, we have two very special guests. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Jonathan and Andrew from MBS Advisors.
Welcome, gentlemen. So Jonathan, why don't we start with you? Why don't you introduce yourself, about your career, tell us about your career, your company, and what you do?
Okay, sure. Spent my whole career in plastics. So our company today is focused very much on plastics. It started with college. So I went to college to be a plastics engineer. Then I worked in a plastics company for 25 years.
Mhm.
Along the way, I had the opportunity to acquire that company. And then I sold it a couple times, once for myself and once for the subsequent owners. And through that, had some experience in mergers and acquisitions. And that's kind of how I came to be at MBS Advisors. So
Well, that's fantastic.
That's what we do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we actually met Jonathan at NPE, I think, in 2012. And that led to a conversation a few years later about selling the final plant of the Plainfield roll-up, which was in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. And so we worked with Jonathan and his colleague Brian to help get that deal done. We were successful, sold it to a Japanese firm called Nisha Printing Company. And it wasn't long after that we talked to you about joining MBS. And hard to believe it's been over 10 years now. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Hard to believe it's been over 10 years.
That's wonderful. How about you, Andrew? Tell us about yourself.
I have been with MBS for, hard to believe, it's been this long, but 18 years. And I've been in lower middle market M&A advisory for just over 20 years. So I started my career in Atlanta with a firm called CBiz, cut my teeth as a generalist in the M&A advisory business. And coincidentally, my father-in-law was doing M&A advisory for plastics companies in Massachusetts. And so we had a chance to talk when my firm stumbled upon a plastic injection molding company. And so I called Terry and got some advice on deal multiples and other transaction related terms and conditions and buyer ideas and so on and so forth. So we interfaced a lot during that phase of my career, and it got it created a spark in his mind about maybe we should join forces, and that would give Andrew and Christy a chance to move to Northampton, my wife back to her hometown. So I jumped at the opportunity in 2008, which the timing wasn't great because that was right in the middle of the financial crisis. But we joined forces, and I started working exclusively on plastics companies and really learning the business. But Terry, the founder of MBS, started the company in 1998. And he's a career plastics guy, was with Dow Chemical and resin business, chemical engineer, and owned his own injection molding company from the mid 80s to the late 90s. Sold it in 1998 and then started MBS. So again, we've been around for 28 years. We've done over 170 transactions, I believe, in the industry. So a lot of injection molding companies, a lot of other plastics processors. We sold color concentrate businesses, compounding businesses. So we've got I think 6 full-time deal makers. So we're small but mighty, and we've grown steadily over the course of the history and our history, and we're excited about the future. So happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming. What a story! So you gentlemen are the deal makers, right? And for our audience here, they are probably noticing that we're missing something, and that's our usual glasses of wine, right? We gotta confess that it's very early in the morning, so thank you for doing this so early in the morning. Certainly, we have a full day ahead of us here at Executive Forum, so we won't be drinking today, but we'll be talking about wine. So let me start with my favorite question. What's your go-to wine, Jonathan?
It's changed, but it's become Spanish wine.
Okay.
So I like the flavor of it. I like the price point, the quality of it. That's definitely my go-to right now.
Oh,
I can't believe I'm hearing you say that. You were,
I was a California
Die
Cabernet,
you were,
diehard Cabernet guy
wow.
for many years. So.
but I'm starting to see the California wine prices go way up.
Yeah.
It's still good wine, of course, but
Yeah. We were talking before we came on camera about tempranillos, right? Our like for tempranillos. For you, it's from the Rioja region, right?
right, yeah, I like that. So that region's a little bit more higher in elevation,
Mhm.
which makes the grapes smaller and have to work harder to survive, and it brings a boldness to the wine.
Yeah, that's
It's a little
right.
stronger.
Right.
So,
How about you, Andrew?
So I like wine, not to the degree Jonathan does, but I am still a Cabernet fan. So I love California wine. We visited wine country. My family and my brother actually lived in the Monterey Bay area.
Mhm.
So we took an opportunity about a year ago to go visit him, spent a week there, and took a few days, went up to Napa. And there was a wine. We had our kids. My daughters are 13 and 16. And so you have to look for a winery that will do a tour with
Right.
people that are under 21. They don't all do that. So we had to search a little bit for one that was family friendly, and we found one called Castello di Amorosa, and so it's a castle in the hills of Napa, and just a really cool place, very awesome property, and you can only buy the wine direct from the winery. You can't find it in any store. So we'd never heard of it before, never tried it. And we did a tasting, and the girls had the sparkling grape juice, and they loved it. So we ended up, like I think a lot of people do, buying a whole bunch and having it sent back to Massachusetts. And one of the bottles that we tried was a Serrata. It's called Serrata. It's a blend. And, I remember trying it and not being that enamored with it. We did buy a bottle of it and have it sent back. And when we opened it in Massachusetts, it was like, whoa, where did this stuff come from? And we remembered that they told us an intern had come up with the blend. So it was sort of funny that we really gravitated towards that one. But I bought several cases.
it usually works the other way. Usually what happens is you're at the winery and it's this wonderful thing and you bring it back home.
And
you're
it's
like,
not like
this
yeah.
isn't quite the same.
Yeah, so I bought 3 half cases of it so far. So
That's
just
good.
bought another one like last
Yeah.
week.
Right now, blends are very popular. And so, speaking of blends, the industry in general is blending, and we see a lot of mergers and a lot of acquisitions. How do you see the industry, gentlemen? What is changing? What has changed over the past 10, 15 years in the industry?
What's changed more recently is, I'd say if we look at the past 10 or 15 years, it's been a lot of that time, it's been relatively stable. I've been doing this with MBS for 10 years, and we complete about 10 transactions every year, and we've done that for 10 years straight. So there's some stability to it, and I think for a good amount of that time, the market was pretty stable. I think more recently, the past couple of years, there's really, since COVID, it's been a little ripply. There's been companies that they're not losing business, but orders are a little bit lower, which generally relates to profits being a little bit lower, and like anything that you own and want to sell, you'd like to sell it when things are going great, not when it's a struggle. So we've seen a little bit more instability, I think, the last few years, but nonetheless, it's still a vibrant and active environment, I'd say. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, when I first got into plastics and manufacturing in 2008, I was surprised by how fragmented it was. It was dominated by these small family-owned businesses. A lot of them second, third generation that have been around for 70 years or 100 years even. And so I remember thinking as an M&A advisor that there is fertile ground in this industry like I've never seen, like I never thought existed. And I think that's still pretty much true, but I think that there's definitely been a lot of consolidation, and we'll talk about this later in the conversation. But private equity is just such a huge force. It's a 900-pound gorilla in the M&A business in the lower middle market, and it's become a driving force at all levels too. But 20 years ago, a private equity group would not have been interested in a 10 or 15 or $20 million injection molding company. but today they're all over it. And that has helped drive transaction multiples higher and keep them stable even through times of turbulence, whether it's resin price inflation or whether it's COVID. So it's there's pluses and minuses to private equity. Certainly for us, they provide liquidity. They are professional buyers and they have no problem getting the money and closing deals, which is good. But there's some differing opinions on how good private equity ownership is for the customers and the employees. Now, some private equity investors are great and they have a long-term view, but there's others that take a shorter-term view of things, which isn't always good for the customers and the employees.
Right. And many of our listeners who are going to be watching this podcast, many of them are business owners in the industry, right? And the question that comes to mind, it's always, when is the right time and what do I need to start doing? How do I start preparing my company, myself, my team in order to go into a transaction? What advice do you have for them?
Well, I would say the first advice is to prepare, because I would say we have a lot of our clients that come to us, and to take the exaggerated end of the spectrum, say, okay, I'm ready to sell my business and I'd like to sell it and disappear next month. So a lot of business owners don't understand that there's a time involved. There's time to sell the company. There's time needed to prepare the company. There's time needed to sell it. And then most importantly, there's time needed to transition it, which can be years. So if somebody says to themselves, I think a few years from now, I want to sell my company, then it's time to get started. And that's what I think we find a lot of business owners don't realize that at first.
Right.
Amongst other things.
Right. Timing.
Right. And timing is everything. The other thing that we see a lot is owners over the course of their career feeling like they're climbing a mountain, and they're always trying to get to the top of that mountain, or the summit. And when they do, that's when they take a deep breath and say, okay, it's time to sell this business. And oftentimes the opportunity to grow, they've already taken advantage of it, and there's not a lot of runway for growth ahead of the company. And in order to have a successful sale, you need a buyer or an investor to see a path to future growth. So I think a lot of owners make the mistake of waiting too long until they've crested the hill and not necessarily having a company that they can deliver to a buyer that has the robust growth opportunities in front of it. So you want to sell when you still got a lot of room to grow. And owners they make the mistake of wanting to capture that growth themselves and then sell it.
Right.
Well, you want to show the investor that he's going to do well with the business.
Right.
So that's a common mistake.
Yeah. It's like with good wine, that aging,
That's right.
that perfect timing in terms of aging, right?
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I was thinking false summits.
Mhm.
They need to be at a summit they think is the summit, but really it's a false summit. So
That's right. And following up on the point that you were mentioning earlier about venture capital and how it's over the past 5 years, not just in the plastics industry, but in many industries,
Everywhere.
financial services, many other industries. How do you see business owners being receptive or not to venture capital versus a much more strategic acquirer that probably has experience in the industry?
Sure. I think that's the answer to that is that there's a broad spectrum. We have a lot of our clients that are family-owned businesses, founder-owned businesses that do not want to talk to private equity when it's time to sell. They want to sell to another family-owned business if they can, a strategic acquirer, somebody that understands the industry, that's in it for the long term, that isn't maybe going to borrow a huge pile of money and isn't necessarily all about the dollars and cents. So we see that a lot. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where the owner really doesn't care. He just wants to maximize valuation and take chips off the table and set his family up for for a long time with a nice check.
And there's pros and cons to both of those, really, because the process of selling your company is a lot of work. I tell our clients at the beginning expect that you have another full-time job on top of running a business already. So if you have, we've been told before, we only want, MBS, you know the market really well, go find us the best buyer, and I just want to talk to one company. And that's pretty tricky. We actually have done it before, but that's not necessarily the best way to maximize your value or even have the best choice of who should own my company in the years to come. But at the same time, there's a balancing act there.
Right.
Because it's a lot of work.
Right. I always talk about, because Andrea and I went through the process last year. I always talk about the importance of chemistry and trust. And I think that's such an intangible element, but it's so important when a transaction goes through. And I think you and I have developed that trust and that we had that chemistry from the beginning, but it's something that it's intangible, like the taste of a good wine, right? But it's important. How do you see that playing in the transactions, on the 10 transactions that you close per year? How many of those deals are you have good positive stories, and maybe some others that have not been as positive for both sides?
I think you said the golden word. Trust is not only important with what we do. Obviously, we're working with someone's, maybe life's effort, and it's their baby. And so, trust is incredibly important with what we do. But it's also important throughout the whole process. It might be the most important thing in terms of making a process successful.
And smooth
right.
too.
It shows up everywhere. So one of the biggest decisions and questions is, do I tell my employees, or who should I tell about this? And we've seen the spectrum of that too, from immediately getting the entire company together and telling everybody this is what I'm going to do, to going through the entire transaction and not telling one person. And I'm not sure either of those is exactly the right thing out of the gate, but we generally lean towards more trust. Believe in your people, that they're not going to misunderstand it. Communicate, and that will always make things go smoother. And then there's a lot of information sharing in a transaction, so you have to be open and trust that that people aren't going to be using it for the wrong means.
Right. And like a good wine, what is considered a good deal? And I know it's a very open-ended question.
Yeah, so for me, a good deal is a deal where people are happy at the closing table when it gets done. And more importantly, that 5 years later, 10 years later, they're both still happy with how things worked out. We've been in transactions that, are great at the end. And then 5 years later, both parties are like, man, I wish I had done that. That was, not a good outcome in the long run. So that's how I gauge it, is years down the road, are both parties still happy?
I visited a company last month that I worked on helping them owners sell maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I stopped by to visit the subsequent owner, and I couldn't believe how much excitement I had talking to the guy. He was so fired up about this business that he had acquired, and was trying to make it better, was proud of the culture and the people, and had grown the business to another level. And meanwhile, the sellers, were looking to retire, and I've been in touch with them along the way, and they're happily retired. So that's the story we want, and it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
So sometimes one party's happy and the other party's not happy with, the seller looks back and says, I don't like what's happening to my company right now.
Yeah.
So that's the fear that they would have.
Right.
Sometimes the seller's happy, but the buyer's not happy because the business didn't keep going up the summit that Andrew talked about. Instead, it went off a cliff.
Right.
So we hope for both parties to be happy.
That's right. And so how many companies have you worked with in total since the beginning of your careers with MBS Advisors?
Somewhere around 170 or 180 right now.
Yeah, we used to keep track of it. Like, we knew exactly. Like, the 100th deal, it was a big. We've I guess it's a good thing. We've done so many that we have lost track of the actual counts. But we've worked with. He said 170 180 transactions, something in that range. But I mean, we've worked with many companies beyond that. I mean, in other capacities. And I don't know if we mentioned that we do recruiting. In addition to the M&A advisory, our firm does recruiting and some other consulting services. So over the years, we've interfaced with hundreds and hundreds of plastics companies.
Okay. And when you enter into the process of M&A, one of the main fears is the deal falling through, right? What's a deal breaker? Is it just always the cash up front? What's the main deal breaker?
There's so many possibilities there that we have to worry about, and that's a big part of our job is worrying about what could go wrong and making sure that we're looking out for it ahead of time and coaching, the seller or the buyer, depending on what it is. Certainly, the most prominent one is if you were selling your company and you expected to get X for it, and all of a sudden your profitability went down, but you still want to get the same price, that always is a tricky situation.
Yeah, evaluations for companies are very dynamic. They can change with 1 or 2 months worth of results.
Right.
So they're volatile. And so that, I think, is the number one reason. We talk a lot about the plastics industry, and there's a lot of proprietary manufacturers out there. But I think at least the companies we work with, it's mostly custom manufacturers, right? So if you think about a custom plastic products company, there's no intellectual property to speak of generally. There's no customer contracts. They're non-union largely. There's no health and safety risks to speak of. There's no environmental hazards, and on down the list. So they're very simple businesses. I mean, companies that work with hazardous chemicals, that could be or have environmental issues, that can be something that would crater a deal at the last minute for sure. But we don't have a lot of those in the plastics industry. So what we see when it does happen, and we like when it doesn't happen, or is very few and far between those situations. But when it does happen, more often than not, it's just a financial performance issue.
Right. And how long does the process take on average?
Yeah, it's somewhere between 6 and 12 months would be what the number I would throw out there. But anything can happen. So sometimes it can go really quickly. We have a deal happening right now that's going to be 2 months. So that's a very fast pace. And then if what you said before happens, where the deal doesn't close, and now we're bringing a second buyer forward with a seller, then of course that could turn into 1.5 years because you've done the process twice.
Right.
So last year last year I had a company that soup to nuts was 4.5 months, and that was nice. That was fairly quick. And then I had one where almost to the day, 2 years from signing our engagement agreement until the transaction closed. So it's all over the board, but it's not 10 years and it's not 2 weeks. So,
wow. So with what type of wine do you celebrate every time that you close a deal, right?
I do remember
Boat box.
I do remember. It does depend on the deal, I guess.
Yeah.
I do remember celebrating with an Opus one time, so that was
Okay.
that was
That's a
good.
nice one.
I thought, well, every deal should close this way.
Yeah.
How about you, Andrew?
Well, it whatever the client wants. So I'm good as long as it's a California Cabernet. I'm good. Although we're working a lot
We're
of
seeing an expense where there was a lot of different bottles of wine.
yeah, for sure. We're actually working on a few things in Kentucky, and I have a feeling that it's going to be whiskey when we are celebrating those transactions.
Good.
Yeah.
Whiskey counts too, right, Andrew?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So you have to do a lot of coaching up front, I imagine, right? And so the first part of your engagement with customers is really a lot of education, I would imagine.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot. Yeah. At the level we work with, which again is a lot of founder and family-owned businesses, the owners need a lot of handholding, and the emotional aspect of a deal can be challenging. So, especially if it's somebody's life work, as Jonathan alluded to earlier, or if an asset or a company that's been in the family for 3 generations, there's a lot of emotion there. So, helping them through some of the emotional hurdles, I think, is that can make or break a deal.
I mean, it's almost always very smart people we're working with, but they're in the business of running a company, and they're only going to sell it once. So I mean that's the difference. You know, where we're selling companies every month or two. So that's what we can help them through. Hey, this is normal. This thing that's happening right now is a normal aspect to this. You know, so take a deep breath. Or hey, you know, this isn't normal. We're going to have to discuss this with the buyer or whatever it is. So
Right. Mhm.
they don't necessarily have that experience. So that's, you know, that's a big difference.
Yeah. And our industry, marketing industry that we're in, it's being disrupted every day by AI. What is disrupting your side of the business? Is it workforce? Is it skills? Is it AI? What is disrupting, if anything?
I mean, I think there's a number of things that are adding up. I mean, interest rates impact acquisitions pretty significantly, and I think that has impacted. It hasn't really impacted our businesses, but we're kind of niche in what we do. But in M&A in general, it's impacted it. No question. More expensive to borrow money. I think uncertainty can go both ways. You know, we've had a lot of political uncertainty, and that's created some interest. We're working with a number of international clients right now that want to have a factory in the United States. But that uncertainty also goes the other way, where investors or other companies are thinking, well, maybe I should wait and see what's going to happen here before I make a big decision.
That's great. And Andre, I know you've been attending the Plastics Executive Forum for many years, and so have you. What are you expecting to get out of this edition of the Executive Forum?
Well, it's always good to get other perspectives from people, you know, you know, at least in our business, we're talking to people pretty regularly. But I think for a lot of the processors, this kind of event gives them an opportunity to commiserate with others and understand what, you know, and as long as they're willing to trust and speak openly, they'll learn something from this. For us, you know, it's an efficiency of being able to speak to a number of potential clients or existing clients or past clients, you know, all in one setting. So that's good.
Yeah, it's networking for us for sure. And it's not just with the prospective clients. I mean, it's always good to see the folks at Whitfleet and even some of our competitors. We're friendly with all of them. So sharing stories from the trenches and understanding what they're facing is helpful. I think collaboration to any degree is beneficial for everyone. It makes us all stronger.
That's wonderful. And you, Andrew, you referenced earlier some other services that you offer. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think it's great for our audience to know.
When Terry Minnick started the company in 1998, he had just finished his stint as the owner of an injection molding business in Massachusetts. And so he billed himself as a generalist consultant that offered a whole suite of services: recruiting, M&A advisory, commercial consulting, and I think there were turnaround workout. There were several other things that he had on his brochure, and it sort of naturally gravitated what the clients wanted was the M&A advisory, and that's where he had the most success. So most of our revenue, the overwhelming majority at MBS, comes from M&A advisory, both buy side and sell side. But we do offer recruiting, and we're in conversations right now, maybe to rev up the consulting side of the business again, which is sort of fallen by the wayside in favor of the M&A advisory. But back, I don't know if we track the recruiting assignments or placements that we do as closely, but I think it's probably over the years it's maybe as Jonathan said, thousands. But
in the consulting we have done is it's kind of a result of the unique position that we're in as a company, because there are lots of M&A advisors, but what's really unique about us is that we didn't touch upon this yet, but you know, because it's all we do, and a good chunk of our staff are former owners of plastics companies. You know, when we're looking at another plastics company, we're not just looking at the balance sheet. You know, where we can see the whole thing, we relate to it, we lived it. So that there's not too many people that have both perspectives. So at the same time, we see a lot of plastics companies. We see things that people are doing really well. We see things that the companies aren't, you know, performing as well at. So we have this big perspective now of of seeing what everybody's doing, what best practices are, so we can bring that to the table on a consulting. So companies have come to us and said, "Hey, can you take a look at, maybe they're planning an exit in a couple of years, or maybe they just want to improve the performance of their company. Can you tell us what we're doing differently than others? How can we improve our business?" So we've done quite a bit of that consulting along the way.
And I love the fact that your staff has experience in the industry. That makes a big difference. So
Yeah,
that's
I think
wonderful.
we're lucky, we're blessed with that, because I think of two things with our company. One, which is may not, I like everybody in our company. We all like each other generally, and that's important to us. And when we're thinking about bringing on somebody new, that's my number one: is will they fit in with everybody and will work out? And their capabilities are secondary, actually.
Right. And you, Jonathan, you talk about something very important, which is company culture, right? And what role does company culture play possibly, I think, in an M&A deal? Does it make a difference? Is it important?
I think it makes a huge difference.
Mm.
Of course, whenever you're selling a company, you're going to invite the prospective acquirers or investors or buyers in to see the place and to tour the factory. And a good, positive culture at the firm, which usually shows up right away, and people can see when they walk the plant floor and they see the employees that look productive and happy to be at work. And it's a huge contrast to cultures where you can tell right out of the gate that the people are dragging their feet and not happy to be at work. And there's a huge contrast there.
You can feel the energy, really different. But and the other aspect of that is the culture. While the culture may not be perfect, if there's alignment between a buyer and a seller and their cultures, a lot of commonality. Sometimes it's culture, but sometimes it's just, hey, we both have the same ERP system. That can make things, or we both look at business the same way, so we're going to be able to, merge together a lot easier. Correspondingly, if there's a big difference in cultures, then we're not likely to have that happiness afterwards that we talked about earlier.
Right. So we have 3 more quarters left this year. How do you envision the following 3 quarters for the industry, for your business?
That's a tough one. I've been saying for a long time that there's storm clouds on the horizon, but we keep chugging along, and there hasn't been a big dip economically. We've seen, with COVID, of course, there was some turbulence, and with inflation, 2022, 2023, there was some turbulence, but that never seemed to derail the M&A environment. So the number of transactions has been pretty steady and has been growing over the last 10, 12 years. So that's good. And it could be that continues. I don't know, but there's some macroeconomic stuff going on out there that concerns me a little bit. So we'll see what happens.
Good.
Yeah, there's uncertainty. AI is uncertain. I think we're all sort of sitting back saying, what's going to happen here? Everybody's wondering, how will this impact me and when?
Yeah.
And I think we all kind of know that when is yesterday, probably.
Right.
So that's a wild card, forgetting about all the geopolitical activity and everything else, and economics.
Yeah, AI is interesting. I think with manufacturing, it is generally going to be a positive. I mean, I think it'll make the companies more competitive and more efficient, more productive. And I don't think AI can replace somebody doing a specific skilled job out on a plant floor, at least not in my lifetime. What I worry about is, jobs like ours that are white collar, sitting behind a desk at a computer screen. Can AI, perhaps replace some of what we do? And so it's definitely challenging. I think, it could be that in 5 or 10 years, or maybe even sooner, the tables turn and the job to have is a plumber or a carpenter or a machinist, because AI cannot unclog a toilet.
I see your point, but going back to the earlier part of the conversation about trust, we're still humans and we need to
Yep.
trust people. We need to relate to others.
That's a great
And nobody that is going through an acquisition process is going to trust AI, not 100%, right? And they need that human reassurance that things are going to go well, that the transaction is going to go through and the reasons why, right? So I still vouch 100% for that. This human interaction, this human contact, it's so necessary.
Right.
Even after the pandemic, we got used to the Zoom meetings, but we went back to traveling because we love to connect with people, right?
And it's never quite the same.
Yeah.
And there's no replacement for a face-to-face meeting.
Right.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So how can our audience find you? Obviously, your website, which we're gonna put, it's on the link that it's gonna appear in this video. But how can they reach you? LinkedIn. What's the best way to reach you?
We try to be everywhere we can, and what we actually try to do is make sure our clients all know who we are by coming to things like this. That's part of why we're doing that sort of thing. Our audience is very targeted. It's not software companies. It's not restaurants. It's manufacturers of components. So hopefully, if we're doing our job really well, they know
who we are
already.
Yeah.
But MBSadvisors.com.
Yeah,
That's our URL.
That's wonderful.
and yes, we're on LinkedIn and everywhere else.
Okay. And what final thoughts do you have for that business owner, that injection molding owner, a company owner that is thinking about, maybe this is the right time for me? What words of advice do you have for them?
I would say give us a call. There's no harm in investigating what your company might be worth today, talking about who the best prospective acquirers might be. And an owner might decide that now's not the right time, but having an upfront and initial conversation with us to start getting familiar with the process and start thinking about all the important facets of the transaction is always a good idea. So we're very accessible and happy to jump right in. And
we're here for the long run. So we do talk to people. I had a conversation earlier this week. It was a Friday, I guess, with a client. But in my conversation with them was, I think you should wait. It's not the right time for you. But it will be a couple of years from now if what we're talking about occurs. So, let's plan for that. So, I think we talked about trust a lot during this podcast. So, there's a team that's needed to really successfully sell a business. And of course we believe we're an integral part of that team for a lot of the things that we bring value for, but also like a good attorney that knows what acquisitions are all about, and because there's a lot of numbers involved here, so it's a good CPA, so that kind of makes up a team that the business owner who's busy running their business every day really needs to have behind them to be successful in this.
Right. And I love this. Andrea, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, well, absolutely. You do have to, that trust part and having that team, because a business owner doesn't have all of that knowledge. So they need to find a partner who've had lived experience or that they trust and will take them through that process. And I think finding the right people that you feel comfortable with is like 80% of your success rate, is really finding those right relationships and those right partners. So.
Yeah, because what we really want is to have a closing meeting with a glass of wine.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You want to be celebrating together. So absolutely.
We're all doing for that celebratory wine, right?
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. I hope this is a wonderful conference for you. And next time we'll do it, but over multiple glasses of wine.
All right,
Yes.
I like it. This has been fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for
having us
joining
here.
us.
Let's wine and do deals.